everyone, Dave here. I hope you're all doing well. Thanks for coming along to another episode of Legends of the Spire. On the podcast this week, I have managed to speak to another member of the FA Cup semi-final squad from 1997, as we spoke to Mark Jules. Now, Mark Jules is one of many players for Chesterfield down the years who have joined us on the back of playing really well against us, in his case when he was playing for Scarborough. And he spent many years with us in the 1990s under John Duncan. Like I say, we had the promotion in 1995 through the playoffs, and then obviously the semi-final a couple of years later, so plenty to talk about. One of the things Mark's probably most well remembered for, I suppose, is being the guy in John Duncan's squad who was the man marker, who would follow the danger man around the pitch, stick to him like glue and not let go. That's thanks to really many of his attributes, including having amazing pace, so he could keep with people. So it was really interesting talking to him about how much he enjoyed following people around the pitch and running after them. And then obviously that all came to a head, I suppose, in the semi-final game in 1997 when he was man-marking Juninho for pretty much a whole match, which doesn't sound like a great amount of fun, but he got his shirt at the end, so that's all that matters really. We are at Spire Legends on Twitter and Instagram, and Legends of the Spire on Facebook, so please do get in touch. Let me know what you think, let me know who you'd like on, and we'll see what we can do. But the podcast that you're about to listen to or watch, it starts with me just admiring Mark Jules' backdrop, as he has a half and half framed Chesterfield shirt and Juninho shirt from that semi-final, which is a thing of beauty. So if you're listening on one of many podcast providers, then do go onto the YouTube page just to see what that shirt looks like, because it's an absolute beauty. But here we are with the latest episode of Legends of the Spire with Mark Jules.
Legends of the Spire!
That's a great backdrop.
I know that's because nobody ever sees it. I know I used to have, I'm not saying I'm sentimental, I used to have the two shirts hanging in my wardrobe back in my old house on just two wire hangers. And I did somebody a favour, and obviously they've seen them in there. I couldn't believe that they're in there, and I don't know how they managed it, but they snuck them out, and because I did them a big favour, and next minute turned up with the shirts in a frame. Lots to still be on the wire hangers.
Which Middlesbrough player is it?
Juninho.
Oh, it is Juninho, so you didn't get it.
Just before Mark Williams got there, I said,
hang on a minute.
I've been chasing him around for most of the games. Get lost.
I've been man marking him all match.
Yeah.
I heard about Mark Williams basically spending the whole match trying to kick the ball out the stadium.
He normally does that. That was his forte, that Willow, because obviously Old Trafford, obviously it's quite high to get it over those stats. I think he nearly managed it. I don't know whether he managed it actually, but he was pretty good at that. Nearly every stadium that we played in, he managed to get the ball out of the stadium.
Yeah, I think it was Tom Curtis when he was on the podcast said that it was like a thing that he had every game to try and get the ball out of the ground at least once, which is some achievement. You can get it out of there, crikey.
Wow.
But yeah, if we start at your beginnings, if that's all right. You're a Bradford boy.
Yeah, from Bradford originally. I wouldn't say I supported Bradford. I liked watching football. I think people wind me up because I'm from Bradford. I was really into Tottenham Spurs growing up, but it's around the time, when they're in the FA Cup, every young lad, when you're watching football, you want to play in the FA Cup, and obviously Tottenham at the time were very good in the early 80s in the FA Cup. So I kind of had a thing about, Tottenham Hotspur originally. But growing up in Bradford, I ended up signing schoolboy forms for him at 14, because he signed schoolboy forms. It was Terry Dolan, who ended up being the manager at the time. He's involved in the youth. He signed me at 14. And then when I joined Bradford, actually he ended up being manager, Terry Dolan, and he wasn't there for long before Terry Orth came in. It was quite hard. It was hard but fair. And then Norman Hunter originally was his assistant, who was, you won't believe, was the nicest guy that he could ever come across. To say what he was like on the pitch, but not. He was like a fantastic guy. And and Terry Orfels as well, because I saw him many times, after I'd left Bradford and he was at Huddersfield and he'd always have a good conversation with you. And I remember when I was at Bradford, because I was there as a apprentice for 2 years and as a pro for 1 year. But even though I remember in my second year as an apprentice, I don't know why, I ended up in Terry Orfels' car. And I think it was just becoming, near the end of his time, because the first team wasn't doing too well. And I think he said to me, Mark, I'm thinking about putting you in against Leeds United. And I think my head nearly fell off, like on the way up. And maybe he put me in the car just to explain he was thinking about it. I didn't play in the end, but I thought to myself, that would have been a debut and a half, to play against Leeds United. But the funny thing is, when John Docherty came in, obviously when I became a first year pro and I was in the squad most of the season, either on the bench or just in the squad, I actually made my debut against Tottenham away. And to say that I actually liked Tottenham and I grew up watching them in cup games, I couldn't believe it. It was like Gary Lineker and Paul Gascoigne was there. And I think I used to room with Philip Babb, Philip Babb from Liverpool. And he actually dropped it. He said, I think you might be itching and end up making your debut today. So that was my only game for Bradford in the first team. But I thought to myself, if I never ever play again, I can't believe I played at White Hart Lane.
That's been amazing. And as a debut then, how do you cope with that as a debut?
I'd say I'm quite a calm person, really. I think I've done quite a few. I've been a few courses. I've been profiled. One of my things is that I think once I'm on the pitch, I seem to focus on, what I'm doing. Obviously, we'll probably talk about Old Trafford a bit later on, but I tend to forget about the crowd. I'm focusing on the job that's in hand, and that's what my profile says, and I tend to be that way. So I'm quite calm. Obviously, before every game, I was always nervous. I always think every player is always nervous, but once you stepped over the white line, I was fine. But it was just, I probably just took it in my stride, really. I probably couldn't believe when Babsy said, I think you'd be involved tomorrow, and obviously manager must have spoke to him before and must have mentioned it to him. And obviously making your debut is like an unbelievable thing, but against Tottenham at White Hart Lane with Gary Lineker and Gascoigne, who was unbelievable. I think he scored in that game. I think he was just like, you wouldn't see him for a lot of the game, and then he'd pick it up and go past about 5 players. That's how he was. He'd stand at half the time, honestly, he'd stand in the middle of, between the back line, and then he'd pick it up, just drift, goes past players. It was unbelievable, really. But I thought I coped with it quite well. Apart from Pat Van Den Hal roughed me up a few times, because I was a young lad. And I remember Paul Allen just saying, listen, this is a Tottenham player, saying, just get on with your game, you'll be all right. As a young player, which I thought was quite nice, actually.
Yeah.
It's quite nice. You wouldn't believe in an opposition player would be, speak to you like that way. But that's how it used to be in those days.
Were there ever any other sports that you're interested in? Because you're obviously really quick.
It's funny. I did a lot of athletics. I loved athletics. When I was younger, I didn't play rugby. I remember my friend. I was supposed to play in the house rugby team at school, and I had a bad back because obviously I played every sport. So I was at sports day. I think they put me in for every single event, and then I think there was a rugby. I did have a bad back, and one of my best mates took my place, and he broke his arm. And I looked and I thought, I don't think that's the sport for me. Although I'd have probably played on the wing if that had been the case. But I think at the age of 11, I was Bradford champion in Bradford Championships in the sprint. I can't remember. I was talking to somebody because it's Bradford Park Avenue's ground in Bradford at the minute. It's got obviously a running track round it, and that's where at the age of 11 I was like Bradford champion at the sprint. I never entered it again, just the once, and that was it. But yeah, I did like athletics. Did a lot of athletics when I was at school.
What could you kind of do 100 meters in then? In your prime?
When I only did when we at school we had these awards, and I think I got supreme. That was the highest. You did every event. I think when I was 12, because I never really caught myself after that. I think I did it in some just under 12 seconds. I think. When I was 12 years old, and it's probably not as quick as other people. I know when I watched, it was interesting when I watched. Remember, we used to have the Rumbelow Sprint Challenge.
Mm-hmm.
when I was at Scarborough, I never got entered for that. Somebody else got entered for it, which is weird. But the time that won the regional was something like 12 point something seconds. And because I saw a recording of it just recently, I thought to myself, when I was 12, 13, I ran that when I was 12, 13. So God knows what time would I run it. Do you know if I'd have entered it, do you know, in the regional for the run below sprint, Jan? So, but I don't know whether I must have been injured or something. I can't remember. I was never entered for it.
A £10,000 prize then. Remember, the guys have to run this in full football kit and football boots on a grass track. None of your artificial surface for these boys. Bit of a ragged sort of start. Witter got away very well, so too did Jules. Third from the right, and Bartlett's got a lot of work to do here at the moment. Big Williams in the middle, looks as though he's going to do it, and he has! John Williams of Swansea. Yes, you might well thank a superior power for that one. That was a smashing performance by big John Williams. He's had a smashing weekend. He scored for his team yesterday at Darlington, and he's collected a very cool £10,000 here.
It kind of helps footballers, doesn't it, to have a bit of that background sometimes? Because there was a few years ago, I think, at Chesterfield, when they brought in like a sprint trainer. Because some footballers aren't very good at running, are they?
No, I can't remember his name. He had the longest legs ever, so he looked like he was, from athletics. But every pre-season and during the season, he used to take us and used to do some running with him, and we used to do. I think I tell my lad, we used to do 800 meters running, we used to do 400 meter running, we used to do 200 meters running, we used to do 100 meters running. So I think probably John and Kev were probably ahead of the time, really. And even like you look at resistance training, we used to have the old tires, a rope, like strapped to you on a harness. Yeah. And it was just an old tire. We used to run down, at Saltergate, sprint down the side on the track with this tire on a piece of rope strapped to you, like sprinting, and that's resistance training. So in a sense, they're quite ahead of the time. But I always say to, because obviously deal with young players, that, and you look in America and you look at, especially in the women's game, that a lot of the top players, this is why the American women are so good, is because they play multi-sport. Yeah. And when I was growing up, I did loads of different sport as well. I did gymnastics as well. Gymnastics, like I said, I was into everything, and it does help. And I know even when I was in the charge of the academy, when some of our lads used to play cricket, and I used to speak to the cricket coaches, and they said you can tell those who play football as well, another sport, rather than just cricket, because they move a lot better, because you're just playing different sports and you get other attributes, and it does help playing other sport.
Yeah, definitely. And then, so after Bradford, so you were there, so you ended up at Scarborough, didn't you, after?
Yeah.
Bradford, it's like 91?
Yeah, I think it was under Ray McHale. I don't remember Ray McHale. Played for Barnsley, I think. I was there for 2 years. Tommy Mooney. I don't remember Tommy Mooney.
Yeah.
Tommy Mooney's there with, I think the average age was about 21. I think it was, at the time, it was a good move for him because it was a young side. Darren Foreman was the striker there who, unfortunately, I think he scored nearly about 40 goals that season, and then broke his leg, double fracture, at the last game of the season. I think there was a number of clubs that were interested in him, but it was just a good young side. I enjoyed my time there. Training was different. I think we trained at a place called the Mount. I don't know when you drive in at Scarborough, if you look on the right-hand side, you'll see, I think they used to do some kind of motorsport going up and round to the top of the Mount. And then we used to run to the beach a lot. We used to train on the beach. It was interesting. So train on the beach, train on the Mount, and we used to run there and run back. And I had a good time at Scarborough. Some decent players there, good young side. I like Ray. Ray was I don't know whether he could take it, if he told you off, because he's quite funny and jovial all the time. So when he told you off, I don't know whether you could take him seriously at the time when I was at Scarborough. But yeah, he gave me a chance, and it was just good to play with good young players and had the freedom to play, really. And I think at the time, before I actually played against Chesterfield, I think I put myself on transfer list because I think we're about mid-table, but the sacked Ray, which I thought we'd had some good cup runs, sacked Ray, and I thought I could see this is the start of the end, of the team, really. And I did play for a few games, and then I think probably the last 7 games of the season, he put me back in. And obviously, I think it was near the end of the season when I played against Chesterfield, but it's really good. Long way to travel because I was still living in Bradford. Yeah.
So you didn't go and live in Scarborough for a couple of years?
No. Travelled every day. Travelled every day. I think what originally when I signed, he said, "Oh," which I think every player says, that you'll move across, and then you see it's quite for a young lad, it's a quiet town. I suppose as a young lad, there's not much to do really. It's a lovely place to visit because even when I'd left there, still went there to visit because it's a nice seaside town. But to live there, imagine during the season, just for a young lad, there's nothing going on there. So, but lovely people, made me feel welcome there, and I really enjoyed my time at Scarborough.
And like you mentioned, cup run. So there was a really good cup run, wasn't there, at that time? Where was it, like Bradford, Coventry, Plymouth? Yeah.
It's interesting because obviously played against Bradford and I got man of the match twice playing at home, and I think we beat them something ridiculous like 9-something on aggregate, or because we hammered them really. And I think Frank Stapleton was the new manager because before when I left, John Docherty had released me, at Bradford, and I think Frank Staples said it's about opinions. He said he wouldn't have let me go, but I think when I left Bradford, I probably wasn't ready. I probably needed to go out somewhere else, and start playing really, because Bradford was like a championship club at the time when I was at Bradford, the equivalent now. But we had some good cup. We played Arsenal. I don't know whether it was that year. Where Ian Wright and Tony Adams, and foggiest day ever. And I remember, I don't know why I didn't start that game. And then I came on. To be fair, I think I had a couple of chances as well, and I think I zipped a ball. And I remember Paul Merson turning around to me and looked at me, and he went, "How quick are you?" It's funny because this was playing against Dixon. I just knocked the ball past him and I was gone. And obviously, I think I went through down the left and I cut it across for Tommy. But I don't think I think he missed the target, and that's when Merson turned around to me and said, "How quick are you?"
Limpar, first time ball in. Moved out effectively. Up as far as Mooney, who's got Jules streaking away down the left, but he is quick. Seaman's off his line and has slipped as well. It's played into the middle and booted out by Adams. That was exciting because the ball was released by Mooney to Jules at the perfect time, and Jules' pace, well, it's astonishing. Seaman had come from his line and slipped, and when the ball was cut back, it required Adams to put it out of play.
And your kind of position on the pitch in those early years, because obviously it changed a bit, didn't it? So where were you at Scarborough? Were you predominantly kind of up front then?
I was a wide player. I've never really been a striker. I can play there. I've never really been a striker. I've always called it the all inside forward, really. I was never a wide player that get down the line and be crossing it in all the time. I was more of a wide player that score goals. That's, from a young early age, I scored loads of goals. I scored a lot of goals, even at Bradford, in the youth team, in the reserves, and then obviously went out to Scarborough. I think it was in double figures both seasons. For Scarborough playing, I think on FIFA they call it RF or LF, don't they? Right forward, left forward, and that's the type of player I was. Yeah. So, and fortunately, because I'm quite adaptable. Probably when I was at Bradford, I think for a year, John Docherty maybe played, on the right wing for a year. Because obviously, as a young lad, I don't realise I probably just used my left foot all the time. So I think in that way, he helped me be a better player, because I wasn't as good as somebody who normally uses the right foot, but I could use, my wrong foot. So I could adapt because I played on the right hand side for a year. But yeah, I was mainly a goal scorer and wide player really, because I think I was in double figures. Darren Foreman was like nearly 40 goals. Tommy Mooney was in something like 20 goals. So I suppose attacking wise, it's quite a force in that division at the time.
Absolutely, yeah. And yeah, then you mentioned game against Chesterfield. So you scored twice, I think, didn't you, in that match?
I scored twice and set the third one up as well. Yeah, scored twice and set the third one. I think the first one was, I think, the top corner. against Chris Marples. I think Chris Marples was in goal at the time. And then the second one, I think it was a dribble. And I think I slotted it in, and then obviously went down the line and then cut it across for, I think it was Darren Foreman to tap in. And then I think that was right at the end of the season. And then I had because I was on the transfer list. So obviously John and Kev must have known. And I think I was living at home at the time, and my mum said, "Oh, you've had a few phone calls, not from Chesterfield, from other teams." And then I wasn't in. And then the time I was in, I picked the phone, and Kev Randall was on the other side. "Oh, Mark, will you come down?" It's obviously Kev Randall at Chesterfield. You come down and have a chat. And the weirdest thing is about Chesterfield is, before I played it, I didn't even know where it was. Chesterfield. It's one of those plays. Even when I started playing for Chesterfield, you'd say you play for Chesterfield. A lot of people at the time, probably the cup run, probably put Chesterfield on the map. Didn't know what it was. You'd always have to say, "Oh, it's near Sheffield." Back in those days. So, luckily enough, I'd obviously played there a few weeks before, and I'd obviously travelled down. I had a chat with Kev Randall and John. I think Kev did a lot of the talk because he knew Ray McHale, you see, as well, and obviously spoke to Ray just about myself, because obviously, so as you're bringing people into the club, you want to know, a little bit about them and the character and everything. So I think Ray must have said, "Yeah, he's all right." He'll be all right. And I had a good chat with John and Kev, and then they said, "Right, we'll speak to the chairman, and then we'll get back to you." And then end up being a Chesterfield player.
Yeah, and it was like about 40 grand, wasn't it? Something like that.
Yeah, it was about 40 grand. Yeah, I think at the time, I think he rang me up, and because obviously I was at home, and he was saying that I think Chesterfield, Scarborough, wanting a considerable bit more for you than we're willing to offer. So he just kept me up to speed, because obviously it was just negotiation between Scarborough and Chesterfield, and then obviously, fortunately, it was all finalised and ended up signing for Chesterfield.
Yeah, so your first season with Chesterfield was the 93-94 season, wasn't it? I
Yeah.
think you finished about 8th that season.
It was an up and down season that, and probably myself didn't adjust straight away initially. I think I scored in the first game, Juninho away, but probably couldn't get to grip, because Chesterfield, I don't know whether the lads will tell you, it was a running club. We call it Chesterfield Harriers. We did run. We ran and did more running. So training wise, we didn't have a fixed. That's the biggest thing for me. We didn't have a fixed training venue. It's Homebrook or somewhere at Ashgate or Brimington, and a lot of time we ran there or we ran back all the time. So that was an experience. But when I look at my career, it was a good thing, because I wasn't the best long distance runner. I was a sprinter really, but it got me as fit as I could ever be, to be honest. Like the training that we did, and obviously we had the athletics coach come in as well. So I thought that put me in good stead, really. But I thought that first season for me, I don't know whether I was still adjusting. I was never at my best, I didn't think, because I was still probably adjusting. Different way. Scarborough played a different way. We just open, and probably to his detriment, really, open and free flowing and just bombing forward, which obviously John was a bit more structured, and Kev a bit more structured, and was trying to get used to that. And I think we really didn't fulfill his potential, especially in the first season anyway.
Yeah. When I had John Duncan on, and I asked him about training, and I asked him if he enjoyed it, and he said, "Well, I don't think the players enjoyed it, but no. I did."
Fart legs. He used to love it. He used to do these fart legs in Homebrook Valley Park, and he'd be at the front, nobody passed me, and then he'd go right to that tree, which is about 100 yards over there, and back to me. We're doing that for about half an hour, around that bench down the bottom, and he was like just prodding. We obviously all the team who had to get back to him. So, but like I said, I think he was ahead of his time, him and Kev at times, because look at the modern day football, you've got to be an athlete. And I think they're athletes for all the divisions, although at the top level, they're at just a different level, I just think. But if you're going to play this game, you've got to be able to run. Full stop. If you can't run, you'll struggle. You'll definitely struggle. But yeah, that first season, I think, I don't know, we had Laurie Madden in that season. I can't remember. Laurie was with us. We had the longest studs ever. in training and games. But yeah, I think we struggled a bit, just for consistency as a team, and myself. I'd admit I struggled myself in that first season.
Did you ever have appearances in the gospel squad on a Sunday?
Oh yeah. Gospel squad. Used to hate it. I couldn't understand the gospel squad at times, because I've been at previous clubs where straight after the game you do your running. But if you look at most teams now, some of them train on a Sunday anyway. It's just part of the routine, and I just think it's something. Like I said, they're ahead of the time, really. Although we didn't like it to play, because players moan all the time. You moan about everything, and yeah, I was in the gospel squad quite a few times, especially when you weren't playing in the first team. You'd always have to turn up for the gospel squad, or if you forgot, Kev would be ringing you up. Where are you? Oh, sorry, Kev, I forgot. Get yourself in, and he'd wait, and you just do the same thing: few fast laps, few half laps, few shuttles, and that was it. And then you was home.
What were your first impressions with the kind of squad then around then in terms of settling in?
I think we had some decent players, and I remember Daichi. I turned up the first day, actually, Daichi, because obviously Daichi's Daichi, isn't he? And there's a little, I think I was in match or something, so he's put a little picture of me on the thing, thinking who we signed here, because it was a strange photograph. My leg looked like it was on back to front or glued on. He said, how the hell are you supposed to play like that? So that's first meeting with Daichi, really. But I think we had makings of a decent squad. I think as time, because we weren't, like I said, that first season we weren't consistent enough. That's when I think John and Kev said we had probably started filtering players, and it started changing over time, really. And I can't even remember in that first season whether it was that first season. I think it was it Phil Carr, his little Carr. It was Darren Carr, wasn't there? Was it Phil Carr?
Yeah.
I think all the left backs got injured. So obviously John just put me at left back. So I kind of flitted from left back to playing left side of midfield that season. But we just seemed consistent. That was the only thing with the squad, and that's when I think Jamie might have, because he didn't, when I first started, Jamie Hewitt wasn't there. He came in. And I just remember players, started to come into the squad. I don't know whether Nicky Law came in that season as well. I don't know if it was that season or the season after. I just remember players gradually, that whoever's in the original, because Paul McGugan used to travel in. Do you remember Paul McGugan? Used to travel in. I used to travel in with him and Andy Morris, because I came from Bradford, met up with Paul and Andy at Andy's place, and we used to travel in. So I remember Paul McGugan, but he hardly played, Paul. He played a few games in that first season. But that's how I got to be good friends with Andy Morris, travelling in with him every day initially when I first came in. And then I think Kev was on the cusps of coming in around that squad as well.
And then obviously it went into quite exciting times season after. Mm-hmm. So like 94, 95, it's playoff season.
Yeah. I think we had a strong side. I think it was Carlisle was always the rivals within that league, and John don't even remember. And when I spoke to him last, he thought I'd played most of that season. I went, well, I didn't play for about the last 10 games of the season, because obviously I had this role as a man marker at times. If they had a decent player, John had just had me marking. It's Rod Thomas, played them away at their place, and I think within the first 5 minutes I went over on my ankle, coming at half time. And basically my ankle was like a balloon. And Kev said, just strap it up. So strapped it up. I think I played for about 80 minutes, try to chase Rod Thomas around the pitch. And obviously that was basically the end of my season, after that game. Although I did manage to get back just before we got to, the playoff final. And I was in the squad, but I sat on the bench, but I wasn't one of the subs. But I came back through a bit too late. But I think we had obviously Phil Robinson. We had a really good side. Obviously Nicky, the captain, very, very, very strong side. I was just I was happy for the team, but you gutted for yourself. I remember sat in the stand. We obviously injured, sat in the stand when we played Mansfield. In the away, then I think Rob Oast broke out and scored, and obviously it was like a cauldron at home as well, wasn't it? When we played them at Saltergate, and it's you obviously sat there, you feel the atmosphere, but you think to yourself, it'd be nice to playing that the playoff like semi-final to get into the final, because even though we won the final, I think the semi-final, because of obviously local rivals, was in my head, that's what I remember most. About that season is this semi-final against Mansfield.
I've heard a few players say that it was like the day after the Mansfield semi that they were like, "Oh, actually, we've got to play a final next."
Yeah.
Feel like a final, but I suppose, because I was going to ask you that, whether it was a bit disappointing, kind of not being involved in those games. Because obviously you're a team player and you're happy for the squad, but on a personal level, it must be a bit.
Yeah, it's always disappointing, especially you're playing your local rivals as well, aren't you? In the semi-finals, and then obviously the finals at Wembley. To miss out playing at Wembley. And I think even Kev. So I ring with Kev. Kev didn't even play. He came on, didn't he? Mm-hmm. So he didn't even start, because that's how John was. Even though you might play well the week before, or you've been playing well for the last, you could be man at match for 3 games on the trot, but then he'd be looking at the opposition and thinking, actually, I need to tweak it this way or tweak it that way. Or if I was playing at fullback, if there's somebody 6 foot odd, he's not going to play me at fullback, because if they'll be launching balls to them, or if they had a quick left winger, I'd be playing on the right back, not left back. So he kind of adapted and changed, because that's how John was. So you knew even if you were playing well. I remember one time, I think it's pre-season. I remember one time he had a team. Like we did a practice match on the Friday. Mm-hmm. This with a team, and literally on the Saturday you got there, the whole team had changed. Everyone's like looking at each other. But then you think, like, if you're not in team, you're disappointed. But he all seemed to get it right. That's the thing.
Yeah.
He all seemed to get it right. You think to yourself, what is he doing here? And then the team would go out and win.
I suppose proof's in the pudding, isn't it? And if it gets it right. Did you enjoy having that role as kind of the man marker?
I don't know how to enjoy, because you do an awful lot of running, but I didn't mind it. Did prefer playing in my normal role, but because it's just an unpredictable role, because you could do more run. I could pick the ball up, dribble off somewhere else, and then whoever you're marking's on the far side, because you end up doing a lot more running than the actual person that you're marking, because they never track you, because those are the type of players. When you're doing a man marking, those are the type of players that don't really track back.
Yeah.
Have free rolls. You tend to do more running than them, because obviously when you win it, you've still got to be involved and join in with play. But then next minute you'd have Deitch or Willow saying, Jules is over here. It's far side, so you'll be running from one side to the other, and you still try to catch your breath, and then you pick the ball up, and then you're off and running again. So I wouldn't say I enjoyed it. I wasn't bad at it. Maybe that's why John put me on there. And I wasn't a tackler either. I think John always trusted me, even when I played left back. It was interesting that when we did any shape or anything, I would never have any cover, because he always kind of obviously you get beat the odd time or whatever, but he always trusted me to do a job. And I wasn't a tackler. I'd just wait. I'd just run with you. I'd either intercept, nick it off you. Because I don't think I've got a tackle in me, to be honest. So I just nick it off you and take it from there.
Which is the best way to defend, isn't it?
Yeah. He's patient, and he knew that I wouldn't dive in. I'd always stay up, and they always found out. Even now, when you speak to players that used to play against our team, from the opposition, they always used to say, "We used to hate playing against you. Used to hate." This is majority. If you speak to a lot of ex-players who played against Chesterfield, we hate playing against Chesterfield. And even when I used to play, I was marking somebody in my normal position, they'd be going, "Come on, Mark, leave us alone." Can't you get yourself on the other side? They hated playing against, because even though they knew I wasn't a tackler, they knew I'd stick with them. Darren Curry. I had some tricky wingers. Darren Curry, I know he hated playing against me. They all used to talk to me, so get yourself on the other side or get away from me, Mark. And I remember, is it Bolton player? He played at Wigan at the time, Lee. Quite quick. remember one time it's farcical. I think at one time because he was playing against. I think he was going to play against Jamie, so he got me and Jamie to switch. So I was marking him, and obviously the suss it out. So he switched to the other side. I switched. All the game, I must have been going from one fullback position to the other. It's crazy. It was crazy, really. But that's what John wanted. So if he shifted, I had to shift to the other side.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, like, especially, I was going to ask us, like the wing back role and different roles around the pitch have all kind of changed, haven't they? And you have to be really, like you mentioned earlier, you have to be really, really fit now, don't you, to get up and down and back and forth and stuff like that. I was going to say it's probably changed a lot, but I suppose for you were doing that back then anyway, weren't you?
I was doing that back then, but the wing back role, I'll be honest, I used to hate. I used to hate, and I used to hate because it depends who you're playing for. Because we were a team that weren't a team that really played football. We would get, I suppose, a little bit like Dyche's team. We'd get up there to the forwards and play off there and play up as quick as you can. And I always used to call it the biggest bleep test ever. You know, for 90 minutes, you'd be up and down, up and down. So when I've, as a coach, ever played, if I have the players ever played, you know, like a 3-5-2, I always play football if I've got the players. Because I just remember from my experience as a player, it's you do your job, but you go up and down a lot of the time without even touching it. And if you look at the best teams, when it's Chelsea, their fullbacks are on, or either Liverpool, their fullbacks are on the ball all the time, aren't they?
Yeah.
And that's how in my head, how I'd play if I had the players. But it's back in the day. I think, like I said, John, he played a 3-5-2. He played all different formations, didn't he? But I didn't particularly like playing wing back, although I could do my job. But you just up and down, which the modern fullback does. But you're right, depending on who you're playing, you can be quite isolated. But it was tough. It's a tough position. It's one of the toughest positions, that wing back position, definitely.
Even as a supporter, like, it's noticeable now how much running those wing backs do. Because, like you say, they are going up, but then someone loses the ball, then they've got to be all the way back again, and then you break and you've got to be all the way up again, and you just think,
it's tough. It's not easy at all. And I was on, because obviously I do the A license with the FA as well, and probably not name dropping. I was on last night with a few players, and we talk about the fullback role, and I had Leighton Baines on the call, and he was talking about. He said he was happy, going there, but then he said you spend 70% of your time running that way, without the ball. That's what he didn't like about it. Do you know what I mean? And it depends who you're playing for. So you're happy going forward and you might be getting it 30%, but he said 70% of the time you're sprinting back that way, which is...
And all that time you're looking at the central midfielder who's just stood there. Your anchor man in midfield's just kind of stood there. Yeah.
But it depends who you play for. I know that some centre backs like you sprinting back and covering, but then some are happy if you go there, because what are you holding midfield players for there? They're like your false fullbacks, as we say. So when you bomb on, they should be like, I think it's like Henderson or Liverpool. Their fullbacks bomb on, they kind of cover in that position. So when it is lost, you dip it, they drop in, and it's like, I think watching Chelsea the other day, you saw Reece James and. On the right hand side, you looked when the ball was on the left hand side, he was so wide and high on the opposition side, but he has that cover because that's the role of your holding midfield player, to play that false fullback where if it does break down, they drop in for you. But times have changed.
Chesterfield leapfrogged Bad Notts to fourth with a 1-0 win at Rotherham and scored one of the best goals of the day. Beautifully struck by Mark Jules, the crown jewels for Chesterfield.
So we go to like 95-96 season, and like the second half of that season, it seemed like you really got the place in the team every week, and it seemed like you just became a regular at that point onwards, then going into seasons after. So I wondered what kind of happened, or did anything happen, or it's just
I don't know really. I think it was interesting that season. I'm sure, because I'd not signed a contract. The start of the season is weird. you say second half, but I got injured. I started off, I think I played actually in my normal position against Burnley. I think Burnley must have won the first games. And I felt really fit. I was flying. I felt really strong. And I'd not actually signed a contract. And then I think we played Brentford away, which actually Paul Davis, who used to be one of our colleagues who played for Arsenal, played for. I keep saying, "Oh, do you remember that game?" He don't really remember, but played Brentford away, and the ball, I don't know, somebody smashed the ball about a million miles up in the air. So I'd run to sprint, to jump and head it. The opposition fullbacks just come in and smashed me, from the side. I think I flipped over. I was midair, flipped over, landed on my side, and I think I'd come off for a few minutes. And I thought I was, badly winded, and looking to go on and visit. I think Rush physio looked at me and said, "No, you don't look right to go on." So obviously going home, I ended up going to hospital. I did with internal bleeding. I crushed me kidney. It's scarred. I think it's my right hand side kidney that's scarred now. But I was in hospital for 10 days with internal bleeding. I think I lost a stone. Couldn't move. John kept ringing me up. I bet you wish you signed that contract. Because obviously there's a contract on the table. I wish you this. I even had a few phone calls because obviously I had not signed a contract. People must have heard that, and from a few directors from other clubs. "Oh, Mark, we're interested." I said, "Actually, I'm actually in hospital, internal bleeding." Anyway, obviously, eventually, I came out of hospital. I think probably about a month and a half later, obviously at home doing stuff and whatever. And that's probably when I probably came back. That's probably when I cemented me, and then I did sign a new contract then, when I started cementing my place in the team. So I was probably not there the first part because I was
in hospital.
Yeah. Internal bleeding. But I ended up signing a contract at the end, and obviously I felt strong. That's the thing. It's one of those. I felt strong, and then I got that quite serious injury, and then come back, and I was probably still in a good, come back fit, and I was probably still in a good place, like fitness wise and everything, and probably stemmed from there. So that season, unfortunately, I wish I'd have not had the injury, because I'd have probably been flying even more that season, because I felt good and in a place. But I started off on the left. That's the thing. And then when I come back, I went to left back, which is weird. But that was John. That's how John was.
Yeah, and we came 7th, I think, that season. So it was a pretty good season as well.
Yeah, yeah. We had a decent season. Strong side again. But that was John. I think I was talking to somebody the other day that he's one of those that I think we did have our playing style, how we play, because we predominantly played down right. We had Kev there, and everything was geared down that side. And he did that because he wanted to play predictable. So if we did lose it, we were all in kind of specific positions. When we'd lost it. But I suppose that was John again in his tactics, and I always remember he used to sit in the stand first, because the way we used to play was to counteract whoever we're playing. So he all knew, and it's probably John and Kev were probably the first coaches that really looked at things, tactically and the strategy of the games. Because some managers you play, it's just 5 aside, 11 asides. This formation you get out and play. But John really and Kev really thought about, the opposition and how they play. And sometimes maybe the opposition knew that, and you see John first 5 minutes in the stand and they'd be coming down. They're not playing the formation that they should be playing, Kev. So you could see him screaming on, like it's like shuffling us around and whatever. But that's how John was, and Kev.
And then we go. So then we go to 96, 97. A lot of games that season.
Yeah, an awful lot of games.
There's a cup run happening in there, but then there was it's a cramped and crowded season with a lot of games, wasn't it? But ultimately, it was good fun, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it was. And I think because there's so many games, I think you give the option as well. Because I don't think I played all the games, because there's certain he'd ask you which games do you want to play in, because the cup run was there. I think if we didn't have the cup run, I think we'd have challenged to go up that season, because obviously we're a good side. I think we're in a good place, but there's just too many games in the end. It was a great set of guys as well within the change room. I think that was like a big thing. You know, the cohesion within the team, and we're all friends. I think we had a bit of a clique. Well, they called us the clique. There was me, Kev Davis, Chris Perkins, Jonathan Howard, and Tom Curtis, because we seemed to hang around together all the time. So they called us the clique in the changing room. But yeah, it was just too many games in the end. As far as promoting, we were just disappointed as far as the league was concerned, because that was always going to peter out. You know, because there was just too many games, and John had to keep chopping and changing. Right, you're going to play in that game. It's interesting. After we played, I think the semi-final, we played Watford away. I played in that game, and it's if, do you know when you're playing when we played against Middlesbrough, you probably don't realise you're playing at a certain tempo. And we played against Watford. I thought it was like Watford were playing in slow motion. You know, I thought we were that good. I think we beat them. Was it 1-2-0 at the time? And it's obviously you raise your level. I suppose if we'd have gone up, it's the type of level that we could have played at. You know, when we played against Watford, because I just thought we was just on the day after the first semi-final, we're just far superior to Watford, who were a decent side at the time. And I just thought we were just far too strong for them.
And going to that the cup run, then you played in every game, didn't you? So
yeah, which you didn't realise until the end of the season or after. Yeah, I was just thinking the other day, Bury, because I thought to myself, I'm sure we played Scarborough, and we did play Scarborough. I think it's Bristol, obviously Forest, Bolton, which shocking pitch. But to be fair, obviously they were flying at the time when we played them. I just remember how bad the pitch was, and obviously Forest and Wrexham. Of all the teams, everybody's thinking, yeah, Wrexham, but they were always a tough opponent, Wrexham. Always a tough team. I always thought had decent wide players as well when he played against Wrexham. So even though people were happy for us to play Wrexham, in my mind, I'm thinking this is probably going to be even though we played Bolton and Forest, this is probably one of the toughest games we'll play, because you know each other and you know how tough it was always against, when you played Wrexham.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think most of the games are at home as well, apart from the Bolton.
Well, I was going to say, because a few players I've spoken to have said if we'd have been drawn away at Wrexham, I think we'd have lost.
Yeah, because Wrexham's always tough. Even like home or away, always a tough game against Wrexham. And like I said, on the other hand, Wrexham had looked at us, as I said to you before, nobody ever liked playing against us. Nobody ever liked so they'd have looked at it and gone, oh no, as well. So, but I suppose we're fortunate to be at home apart from the Bolton game, we're at home for majority of games, and we're always tough team to beat at home. So, really, I suppose you say the gods were with us, really, when you look at it in that sense. But we're always a tough team to beat, and I think that season we're a good side, very strong. So I think home or away, as we showed against Bolton, away, I think we'd have been a tough opponent anyway.
At what point did it kind of feel like you were going on a really good, exciting cup run, like after the first round?
When you had all this media attention, because obviously I was never into the media attention. You know, I know everybody wanted to do interviews. I just go around through the back door and go home, and believe it or not, when they brought the cup and everything, because I grew up on the FA Cup, and I was trying to think, I'm not superstitious. I'd never be one of these, have the same tie-ups or wear the same whatever for whatever games. But the only thing I was is the not touching the. I always thought to myself, if you've not won it, you shouldn't touch it. And I was probably one of the older players that never picked that FA Cup up, because obviously the FA Cup was a massive thing. I know it's a massive thing for every young player, but I always believed in my head, you only touch that cup if you win it. So all the photographs you'll ever see, if any dugout, you'll never see me with the cup. Other players will have the cup in them, but I never touched the cup at all.
You're there in the stand shaking your head going, don't do it.
No, I know. But I also think I'm not superstitious, but in that sense, I always just thought to myself that it's for me, it's for only those that have won it, to pick that cup up, because obviously I grew up on the FA Cup.
I suppose a lot of people now as well won't realise how because obviously you kind of chose the cup over the league in some ways, and nowadays it would probably be completely the opposite.
Yeah.
But then it was kind of the thing that came on at 9 o'clock in the morning, and you watched the teams on the TV set up and everything. It was massive, wasn't it?
It was an all day thing, and obviously I grew up on that. You know, watching the FA Cup, your stomach could be churning. You know, I'd be sat there watching it, the build up, and then even if obviously I support Tottenham growing up, but even if Tottenham were playing, you know, your stomach would be churning. You know, like before the game would start. That's how excited, you know, I was. You know, growing up as a young kid, watching the FA Cup, and obviously it's a massive thing for the town as well, isn't it? And you're not surprised that, and obviously the money that's generated for the club as well. So you being a lower division club, so you can't go away from that. But I just thought it was just bedlam just around the. You know, I remember, I think for the semi-final, I was driving home, and I saw it again. The queue was ridiculous. You know, people queuing up for tickets. I think they opened up that night. Didn't they all got sold out or whatever. But the queue for tickets, and I couldn't even remember where I got tickets for. I remember I went to play in a charity match, because I still keep in contact with, you know, we've got a WhatsApp group, you know, for the Bradford guys who were apprentices and pros. We still have like little reunions, and one of the lads, I remember obviously when I went to semi-final at FA Cup, and I said, "Did I get your ticket?" He went, "Yeah." I can't even remember. I must have got that many different people. I couldn't even remember that I got him some tickets. So it's like that's how. And I even got my old school teachers' ticket, you know, because obviously they helped me, you know, growing up. Yeah. So I come from a single parent family, and they after school they dropped me off at training because my mum was working, and my mum would pick me up afterwards. So I never forgot them, and they came to both semi-finals. You know, some of my old school teachers. So, and for me, it's still a big thing. The FA Cup. I love the FA Cup. I know what you say, that in this day and age, that especially maybe in the Championship, in the Premiership, that obviously the league might take over because it's a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, so much money, isn't it?
Yeah, there's so much money involved. But for me, FA Cup is one of the biggest things for the player, especially growing up. And I think you probably even speak to some professionals now, they'll still say the same thing. Obviously, clubs see it in a different way. It's difficult because managers got to manage games, haven't they? And whatever. So it's not easy, but for me, it's still massive, the FA Cup.
So on to, obviously, when I spoke to John Duncan, he said for the Middlesbrough match, we had a plan without you marking Juninho and a plan with you marking Juninho. Yeah. And we started with the plan without you marking him, and then very quickly changed.
Yeah, changed. Because I keep saying, obviously, he had Ian Dunn in training. You know, like I had to do we practiced, whether you need to practice or not, because I've done it quite a few times before. But I had Ian Dunn in training, and obviously I'm leading up to the game. Because like I said, he'd look at every nook and cranny. Was John. He's like really good in that way tactically, and obviously he'd have me, Ian Dunn, running around with the ball. I'd be chasing him in training, but obviously it's not the same thing, is it? Juninho, Ian Dunn, even though I like Dunny, but not the same thing. And I think probably because he was just getting on the ball. And I think what John had seen as well, I think if I remember that season, so a couple of teams that nullified Juninho, you know, because they had man markers in him that season. I actually remember that. I can't remember which teams they were, but I do know they had some man markers in that season, and they'd done quite a decent job against him. So I think the biggest thing what people don't realise, I was booked within the first 5 minutes, you know. So I was running around because I didn't mark him in the extra time, which is over the 90 minutes, because I think Perks had got cramp, and I don't know why Darren Carr ended up marking him, you know, in the extra time. I don't know why he did that. I just might be because he just wanted the shape, you know, drop me in at left back. But yeah, I had to chase him around for 90 minutes, and I was on a yellow card. And obviously that penalty that wasn't a penalty. You know, with Daichi, if you look at me, I've had to go like that, because I know if I'd have brought him down just outside, I'd have been off. So I'm probably thinking to my head, what would have been different, if I'd not received that yellow card. But I don't think John remembered. I think even John remembered I had a yellow card within the first 5 minutes. I think it was against Hignett. Which I'd only had 2 yellow cards in my whole career, I think, as well. So yeah, but so after that, I think must have been after the first 10 minutes, it changed, and I was marking Juninho. I just think it's just having a presence around him, because he's still chasing shadows at times with him. But I just think it's having somebody next to him and not him, because obviously it's dangerous. You give him loads of space, he just kill you with his run. So it's just having somebody there, even if he's running with it or you're on his shoulder, he's going to have to pop it off. And fortunate enough, I think at the end, I think John, to be fair, he came up to me and thought, he praised me. He said, he said to me, I'm not saying the other man of the match, but he thought I was his man of the match for that game, which was nice of him to say.
Did you say anything to Juninho, like during the match? Were you having like a word in his ear or trying to put him off?
I couldn't even breathe, chasing. Couldn't even catch my breath. But it's one of those games again where Willow and Daichi, again, he wouldn't. If I got it, I remember a few times I got it and then dribbled with it and then passed it on, and I turned around and they're both again shouting, "Jules is over here." So I'd be looking to be far side of the pitch. So I've just popped it off, and I've had to chase across next minute to get it. I'll be honest, I didn't have time to think, playing against him, because he was always, you had to be alert with him. If he switched off, what type of player he was gone. So apart from that, I was still trying to get my oxygen levels back up and back in. I never even said, we never spoke a word. And I was always like that when I was playing anyway. More or less, even when players were saying, "Mark, get over the other side," I just get on with it. And a lot of times they said, "Oh, who were the best players you played against?" And I think half the time I didn't know, because I'd mark him, do my job, and then that's gone. Probably if I look at the team sheets now, I remember him. He wasn't bad, whatever, but he's quite difficult to play against. But I kind of just, anytime I played, I had a role to do, concentrated on that. Never, because even when I played on the left wing, I used to get smashed on left, right, and centre. I get up, get on with it. I never say anything, and I think players used to hate that. So I think silence is good in a way.
Yeah, definitely. What was it? And obviously the equaliser to make it 3-3. Like as supporters, obviously you go crazy when something like that happens. What's it like as a player when something like that happens? It's just.
I think I was just stood at the back, and I was just big relief. I didn't run. Obviously, I was too far back. I was too far back. I didn't run it. I think it's just like a massive relief, really, because we've done so well, throughout the game. And even when I look back, I've never said this to John. I've said it to other players. It's that I don't know whether we got carried away with the occasion, because as well as I know, if we were 1-0, 2-0 up against any team in the league, that was it. Mm-hmm. But if you watch that game, we were still going forward. We were still playing and going forward. Actually, if that had been a league game against Middlesbrough, it'd have stayed at 2-0. And I just don't, when I think back at it, and I don't, obviously Kev and John, well, John probably, obviously Kev passed away now, but John might be able to tell you what was going through your head. I always think back that I don't know whether the occasion got to not just us on the pitch, but to John and Kev on the side as well. Because like I said, in a league game, that would have been it. It'd have been a close shot, would have just sat behind you, come on, we'll just break on you, and that would have been it. But maybe the occasion got to everybody, and they ended up coming back into it. But I always think that in my head. I know we're always thinking what could have been, but we were never like that normally. We just don't, yourself. That's it. The game's finished now. We 1-0 up, 2-0 up. But is what it was. Obviously, Russia didn't have a Russian linesman, did we? At the time, which would have been an interesting final. I wonder who had been man marking for that game. If I'd have got to there'd have been quite a few. Zola, I don't know whether Pinek, that'd have been an interesting one. But it is what it is, isn't it? Really.
Well, we said it couldn't happen twice. It has done. It's Chesterfield voices you're hearing now.
Sorry, Martin. I looked around when the goal went in. Ravanelli was flat on his back. Juninho and Emerson flat on their back. Absolutely distraught.
0-0 at half-time. 2-2 at regulation time. 3-2 halfway through extra time. And in the nick of time, Jamie Hewitt keeps Chesterfield in the FA Cup.
Ah, dear. Why do we love this game so? That's why.
I want to talk to you a little bit about just coaching, because you kind of eventually you left Chesterfield and had a little spell at Halifax and played quite a few games for them, and then you ended up back at Chesterfield until I think it was like 2013 or something?
Yeah, about 2013.
A long time, and you were kind of developing a lot of young players then, weren't you? So, and that's obviously what you're doing now. So
yeah, I think it stems from, like when I was growing up anyway. I love different sport, and when I was at Bradford, I used to go back in the off season, back to my old school and do the PE. So I was always interested in, development of young players, young people anyway. And obviously my time as a youth team player under Arthur Graham at Bradford was the best time, one of the best times ever. Just training, how we enjoyed it. And that's always got me interested, in the coaching side. And obviously while I was at Halifax, I was doing my UEFA B, qualifications. And then it was just weird that I think I went to watch, Kev Davis, Jamie, his brother, was playing in the academy, and just walked up, and I think Jonathan Pepper and Dave Bentley were there, and I was there with Kev, and he just says, "Oh, do you fancy doing a bit of coaching, Mark?" I said, "Ironically, I'm going through my, coaching qualification." So that's how it all kind of started. So that's how I kind of got involved with Chesterfield. My big thing is the development of young players. And I know even my lad said, "Have you never thought about first team, Dad?" And I went, "Well, you look, I've seen that many managers, and you don't last long. There's a bit of luck, but you don't last long." But I've always liked young players developing and try and get them in the first team or develop them to be better players. Because I played with Jeff Horsfield and Grant Holt, and I've seen how, because they got released as young players, had to drop and come back. Because even when I speak to young players now, I always say to them, it's never the end. It depends on yourselves, because you've all got, you're all athletes. You all got the ability, much ability as you see out there, but it's a lot of this, the psychological side and how you're driven. And obviously you look at Grant Holt, Jeff Horsfield, they were driven. I know they dropped down, but they were driven to come back, and obviously development as well. They're two skinny rakes anyway, as young players. So you can imagine, and you looked at them when they were playing in the prime, where they're obviously built into they filled out into the bodies and become men, didn't they? And some are not quite ready at the time. And it's trying to get some players and coaches, actually, because I'm a coach developer, to understand that at this moment in time, that player might not be ready psychologically, physically. And to get clubs to realise that as well. Some clubs are not prepared to wait. I know some clubs have got loads of money, at the top end Cat 1, so they can wait, but at the lower end, like Chesterfield and other teams, I suppose you've got to be ready, haven't you? Like the likes of Kev Davis. The Kev Davis will always get on this world at the lower end, because physically they're there. But yeah, Chesterfield 12 years, working with Dave Bentley, enjoyed it immensely. Love working with the players. I'm probably at fittest then as well, even though I'm playing. I'm playing a charity match now. I can't walk for 2 or 3 weeks, but I used to join in all the time. When me and Dave were taking training, we always made sure there was one man down in one side so I could join in, really. But no, just watching the development of these players and become men. I still see a lot of them now, speak to them. The players that have come through, weirdly enough, when I was watching my lad at Staveley, used to watch a lot of the games and used to get players going, "All right, Mark, I must have released that many players in Chesterfield. It's unreal." My son keeps looking at me. He says, "Is that another lad that you released, Dad?" It's just, but obviously I had a good relationship with them, so it wasn't a thing where they're kind of resentful or anything, because I always made sure I had a good relationship, with all the players. because that's how it was when I was a young player, and I think that's how it should be, and that's how you kind of develop them as people, really. But yeah, I had a really good times. Like, I think all in all, it's about 17, 18 years or something as a coach and a player at Chesterfield. So, and I haven't been this season, but I try to get to at least a couple of games every season just to see. I'm always looking at results as well, aren't I? So I'm always trying to get to Chesterfield games just to see how they're doing as well. But yeah, coach developer now, which I probably was always going to end up being, which I developed. I've got scholars. I've got 6 clubs I look after: Accrington, Burnley, Bradford, Sheffield United, Salford, Fleetwood, where I do the level 2, with the scholars. But obviously I do UEFA B with current pros and ex-pros, and I deliver on the A licence as well. So that's why obviously I said Leighton Baines earlier, name dropping, but obviously he's on a senior pros course, and it's good to see them develop and go the pathway. And I'm just trying to encourage them, because I did a degree while I was still playing as well, because football's a short life. For me, I don't care what level, how much you get in, you got to think about what you're going to do afterwards, for me. And I'm just trying to, obviously with the scholars and the pros, just trying to get them, if they think about coaching anyway, just get them to think about, a pathway into that before you actually, because sort of back in the day, a lot used to finish and think, what am I going to do now? Right, I'm doing the coaching, but it takes time. Why not do it while you're still in the club? And I do it with under 23 players as well. So the clubs are starting to think, right, under 23s now, because they're not in education anymore. Can we get them on the coaching pathway? So like Sheffield United, I've done it. I'm starting one at Fleetwood, done it at Burnley with under 23 players, which is good. So things that clubs are starting to think, not just about the playing, but after for players as well.
Well, then, yeah, if the average playing career is what, did they say it's like 4 years or something, then it kind of comes in handy, doesn't it, to be prepared?
Yeah, it's so short, and you got to be forward thinking. That's why when I'm talking to pros or scholars, I try to get them to think about the future. I say, I know your only thought really is playing football, but you got to think about, because unfortunately you could get injured, serious injury. You might fall out with the game. You need something else a little bit of a backup anyway, because many strings to your bows, I always say.
Who was the most talented, like, Chesterfield youngster that you kind of was there anyone that really stood out?
Well, I always thought, for me, Craig Clay, but didn't quite get enough game time. I know Tendai, when we had him, he played a diamond. He played top of the diamond, Tendai, and I think he's got about 17 goals that season. I used to say to him, if you could hit the target, Tendai, you'd be playing in the Premier League. I used to say to him, but Tendai was really, like attitude, committed attitude. He could run all day, always had a chance. Clay, I thought was a talented player. Probably, I suppose, about opportunities, isn't it? And right manager, right place. I think he's at Leighton Orient, isn't he? At the minute, he's had to drop down and come through. Just trying to think who else. Bowery, I still speak to him on a UEFA B. Hit and miss. He'll say it himself. We used to get some bollocking Bowery because he was up and down. Because some days, for somebody of his size and pace, some days he wouldn't turn up, and then other days he just destroyed, a back line. I think one year playing against Scunthorpe in the youth, their centre back had been playing in the first team, and Bowery just destroyed him. That on his day he could do anything, but it's just about being consistent, really. I think just before I left, we had like young Loss Maguire, who's on the ball, is a very good, talented player on the ball. Obviously, not watching as much recently, but I'm just trying to think of who else.
It's interesting with Loz Maguire, because that's kind of his role now. Left side of the 3 centre backs, he will go 80 yards up the pitch with the ball and be crossing it in or be on the end of something.
He's got the talent to do that, because he's good on the ball, and it's up to managers to recognise that. I know when I played, because we've played the difference. I've played obviously with Tendang, with Craig Clay, that we had 4-4-2 diamond, because we had the players to do that. I've played a 3-5-2. I know I've played a left side midfield player, left centre half. Because the they're good on the ball, or I've played a centre midfield player as wing back, because they're the right attributes. It's up to you to recognise, the attributes that your players got. Sometimes they don't like it because they're thinking, why are you shoving me out in those positions? But I've been moved. But it's the manager recognising that actually you've got the right attributes to, to play in that position. Yeah. But it's probably quite good for Loz. He'd probably make a good, centre, in the centre of the three as well, Loz, because he's pretty decent on the ball, isn't he? But I think over time, but this is what I say to scholars. I think we've had some talented players over the time, but then it comes down to that.
Yeah.
Whether you go further or you stay in the game, unfortunately for some players. And I think when I say this all the time to young players, and they look at me and they think, yeah. And I think it just drifts away, because I've been there, I've seen it. Many years of working with youth team players, and I'll say it year in, year out, talented, you can run. But if you haven't got the right mental attitude, because I always say to the scholars, when you're watching your first team, how many players that you see out there and you think, actually, they're average, no disrespect, but they're average. And I think the difference is that it's like they believe in what the talent, they'll run, they'll do the right things, and they'll forge a decent career.
And it's interesting, the last few years at Chesterfield, the players that we seem to have picked up in the squad now that are all winning games have come from further down the pyramid.
Probably
like
hungry.
And you kind of, as fans, you look at them and go, how have they never played League Two, League One, even higher up? But like you say, it's application, attitude.
Yeah, and hungry players as well. I know, because I know scouting. I know when Kev went to Southport, I know I was talking to a scout. I was trying to recommend somebody who knew, a lot of long league players, and all this scout was talking to me about is about hungry players, and that's what you need. And no disrespect to players who are drifted down from the league and into here, but it's different. It's totally different. So I'm not saying they're not hungry or weren't hungry, but there are a lot of hungry players in the lower leagues.
Well, to finish off then, so it's like 25th anniversary of like the whole FA Cup has started, because I think we've already gone past the 25th anniversary of the first round now. So it's like anniversary every match.
Yeah.
Is that, how often do you kind of look back on that? Obviously, you're kind of working in development, coaching and all sorts, but how often do you look back? Kind of, obviously, you've got a reminder on the wall every day.
Yeah, I don't tend to look back, even when the reminder on the wall, I forget it's there half the time. It's like when they've got a workman in here, I can see them, if they're interested in football, you can see them looking at it and don't say anything. And then about an hour and a half later, did you used to play? It's quite interesting. They do look at it a lot, but I don't tend to look back until somebody. I'm not saying I forget, but because you're getting on with life, until somebody actually brings it up. To be honest, I'm kind of going forward all the time, and then somebody will bring it up. What about this semi-final FA Cup? Or you see it on Twitter, or you see because it's every year, all around the semi-finals and stuff, you start seeing all stuff around it. That's when I probably start thinking about it. But like I said, even though I've got this behind me, probably drift past it most days, and don't even realise it's there.
Well, if you're not going to miss it, I'll have it. I'll send you my address. You can send it up here.